We've got a fun evening with three great recruiters up here, so we're going to get around to our questions. But before we do that, Edie is going to open us in prayer, and we'll get started pretty soon. So, Edie.
Shall we stand to honor God? Oh Lord, our Heavenly Father, we thank you, we praise you, and we magnify your name tonight. We love you and want most of all to serve you. That is the whole object of being human, going through this experience as a human being. We thank you for bringing us through all day long, from the time we opened our eyes this morning up to this very moment. Lord, thank you for everything that you have done for us so far, including being able to come out through the treacherous highways to CNM, being able to navigate the ice and the snow and would you please allow spring to just peek through, Father? Yes, we would love it so much if it were warm again, just a little warmer. Thank you so much. We love you. You're magnificent. For the servants you're about to bring before us tonight, we give you praise, honor, and glory, because we know that they're going to drop some wisdom on us. They're going to give us some knowledge. They're going to allow us to peek into areas we are not otherwise able to see. Please bless our leadership here at CNM and all of us as we sit and learn and partake of all the gifts you have to give us tonight. This we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, well, everyone's getting settled in. I'm not sure whether we have any announcements this evening that we want to get up before we have a second. Oh, that's right. Thank you. See, I was going to forget that quick, Mark. We have a rack of clothing. When you come in, you see all the racks of clothing. Particularly, we've been asked by the clothing ministry tonight, there is a rack of men's clothing. They want everything off that rack gone tonight. That is their request of us. So I appreciate it on the way out. The rack will still be out. All of them will be gone except that one. If you find anything that you think might work for your wardrobe or someone you know's wardrobe, please take it with you. The clothing ministry is kind enough to hold that clothes just for us. If we basically don't take it, it's going to be out here for the next 50 weeks of the year. But if you see that one rack out there, Mark's your man for right now. He's going to keep reminding me. If you see that one rack, we want to do that. And I know we had a quick announcement. We got someone come on up and share the input. I know we had someone who's here to talk about his company. So John Medeiros, right, John? John's in real estate here locally and has some opportunities. He just wanted to share for a quick couple minutes. I told him to say a few words, and then we're going to get to our recruiter panel.
Well, thank you very much. I have kind of a hard. How many of you guys are unemployed right now? Whoa. Okay. Well, I was in your seat once, not here at McLean, but I had scratched and clawed and bitten my way up the corporate ladder, had reached my dream job, which was to be a vice president, chief financial officer of a commercial real estate firm here in Tyson's Corner. And I loved the job. I absolutely loved the job. I got up and I was at my desk at work every morning at 3 a.m. And I would work until 6. And then after 6, there'd be blood on the walls if I stayed any later. But I loved it. It was a rush. It was a nonstop adrenaline rush. How many people would love to have a job like that? It'd be great. I was passionate about it. But then one day, it came to an end. The market did one of these. The bank stopped funding our loan draws. We had an office building on the Bethesda Metro we were building a food processing plant in Maryland. That was exciting. A lot of diversity in the kinds of projects we were doing. And I found myself on the street, having lost my dream job, And I thought, now what am I going to do? Well, I had gotten my real estate license about 5 years previous because I was an investor and I was interested in buying houses and doing all that stuff. And so I happened to have this real estate license, and I was just fooling around in residential real estate, kind of as a way of just sort of decompressing, you know, and commercial real estate is fairly intense. When you're building millions and millions of dollars worth of buildings, and you're dealing with attorneys and lenders and tenants and all kinds of things, you know, it gets a little intense. It's fun, but it's intense. And I used residential real estate as a way of kind of decompressing. And so I thought, well, here I am. I've got a residential real estate license. It's the same license for commercial, but I had a real estate license. I've been selling houses for 5 years. And I came home and announced to my wife that I was going full-time in real estate. Well, you can imagine the reaction, like, what? What? And I said, hey, don't worry about it. I've got this. And so I continued doing the same thing I did before. I got up at 2 a.m. I was on the street at 3. And I flyered neighborhoods. I didn't know what else to do. But I flyered 10,000 houses a month. And so it was successful. And I more than replaced my income in my first year. And my income proceeded to grow by 50% per year. And so, and honestly, it's not because I knew what I was doing or I was particularly good at it. It was just overcoming the obstacles with sheer, raw, hard work. And, but I discovered it was my calling, my passion. I've never looked back. And there are some of you out here that maybe you're pursuing a job, and I would submit to you that maybe you should pray about pursuing self-employment. Maybe in real estate, maybe consulting, whatever, but consider that as an option. I was not willing to consider it until that happened to me, and I did. And I reached the point where my income was, I don't know, 10, 12 times the most I've ever made working for a JOB, which we all know. Do you know what JOB stands for? Just over broke. And so it's been a delightful ride. And it's you know, I only wear neckties to events like this, but you know, I wear boat shoes and open collar, and you know, I haven't worn a suit in months. I think the last time I wore a suit was to a funeral. So it's, you know, so it's a lot of freedom. It's a lot of fun. And so I would encourage you guys, if you think that, has anybody ever thought about a career in real estate? 3 people? All right, I see that hand. I see that hand. Come on, anybody else? I see that hand. Okay, I see that hand. Great. Come talk to me, because we have a training program. When I first got into the company I joined, well, I kind of found my way to Exit Realty. I was with RE/MAX for 10 years. And I joined this funny-sounding company called Exit Realty. And what was unique about Exit is that they would compensate us as real estate agents for bringing in our buddies. So I thought, okay, I got this. So I brought in 10 of my buddies. And they will compensate you up to $10,000 per year per agent. So I said, this is great. So I brought in 10 people. And then I brought in some more people, and some more, and more and more. And this got up to about 120 people. Do the math. Do the math. It's very lucrative. So it's, you know, certainly some fell off during the Great Recession. But it's not like it's not like it's all commission. So let's talk about it. If you guys want to grab me, call me afterwards. My name is John Medeiros. My phone number is 703-855-HOUSE. I got the hook. I'm getting the hook. Oh, no.
Thank you, John.
Give John a hand. Thank you for being here, John. Anyone's interested, he's here in the room. Good. Well, we're going to get started. If I could ask our panelists to come up and join me up here on stage, we're going to kick this off and get started. It's okay if we clap for them while they're getting up there.
Bob.
Yeah. We will, you know, the format that we do here is they get a chance to introduce themselves a little bit. I'll ask the first 5 or 6 questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience. So if you guys have questions, we'd love to have them. When it comes time for the audience portion, I'd ask you to stand up if you have a question, and we'll get a microphone to you so that we can capture this on tape here, that Will is kind to do. So, Brian, if we could start with you, since you're in that first seat.
Okay.
If you guys would just maybe share a little bit about yourselves, your companies, and any words of wisdom you want to share before we get around to grilling you guys for the next 90 minutes under the lights.
Okay. My name is Brian Jones. I'm with Ronstadt USA. I am located on Leesburg Pike 8150 Leesburg Pike to be exact. We are the second largest recruiting agency for administrative support. My bread and butter, if you will, in terms of positions that we focus on are administrative assistant, executive assistant, call centers, as well as entry-level positions in both accounting, IT, as well as HR. My passion, if you will, is definitely helping people find the right match. So really taking a look at what a company requires beyond just the hard skill set, but really culture fits, making sure the way that a candidate will want to be managed, looking at retention, being able to actually consult versus just placing someone is kind of my passion. We do run a full desk in our office, and so I do both the sales as well as the recruiting. So it kind of eliminates the telephone game, if you will, in terms of knowing if this is the right role or right career for you. We have open house, and I'll keep talking about the open house. We have an open house every Thursday in our office from 8 to 5 p.m., which actually allows candidates to come into our office and have an interview done on the spot.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Amira?
My name's Amira Matthews, and I'm a recruiter with Verizon. I work in the Ashburn office, which is 22001 Loudoun County Parkway. Actually, it's more like a complex versus an office, pretty huge. I've been in HR about 14 years, master's in HR, been recruiting about 9. And for Verizon, I actually look for sales candidates, so primarily cloud, technology, sales, things like that. And I recruit for positions everywhere from here in the Washington, D.C. area, all the way across to Santa Ana, California, Rancho Cordova, California, and all the way up the East Coast and down south, so all over the place. As far as what I'm passionate about or why I like recruiting, I like helping people find the right opportunity. I'm a straight dealer, not a car salesman. I pride myself on being that way too. And I think it's just a wonderful thing when it's the right match for both of us, the organization and for the person. So that's all I have.
Good, thank you. Kit?
Hi, good evening. My name is Kit Weinstein, and I am a talent advisor with STG Incorporated. We are a government contractor, mid-size, based out of Reston, just up Route 7. And I just want to say thank you very much for allowing me to come here. I have been, for those of you that are unemployed, I'll tell you a little bit about my story. I was in the airline, first out of college. I'm a Nebraska native, very proud of it. Go Cornhuskers. But when I got out of college, I taught high school business education for a couple of years. And having grown up on a farm, I'd never really been out in Nebraska much. So I went to visit a college chum in Texas. And lo and behold, it was like, wow, look at all those airplanes at Houston Intercontinental Airport, which is what it was called at the time. And so with my knack for talking a lot, I was able to secure a job interview with the manager of a Continental Reservations facility and was offered the job on the spot and given several locations from which I could have worked. So when I told my mother and my grandmother, who I come from a family of teachers, both grandmothers and my mother, that I was going to resign I had 2 very positive years. You know, I didn't smile for the first 6 months, and that's pretty successful when you're a high school teacher. And I said, Mom, I'm gonna go to Houston, Texas, and I'm gonna work for $5.77 an hour. But the cool thing is, don't give me any flack yet, Mom, is I can fly for free, and so can you. That didn't help. I mean, she thought I'd lost my mind. And my first week, I thought I had lost my mind. But to make a long story short, the gentleman that I interviewed with, John Hatch, never will forget him, he asked me what my dream job would be. And I said a recruiter. And that was back in the Frank Lorenzo era. For those of you that are in my age bracket that might remember the airline days. And Mr. Hatch said, we're gonna take over People Express, New York Air. I've got a lot of jobs I've got to fill. Do you want to be a recruiter? And I said, are you serious? So the reason I'm telling you this is follow through on your dreams, and you don't know who that individual you're going to express your dreams to will actually remember them. So I, like Amira and Brian, I'm very passionate about what I do. I love what I do, and I love to speak. So it was an honor that my director was not able to come tonight, and thus I'm here. So what do? Most of my jobs are, they require U.S. citizenship so that we can sponsor you for a clearance, or we'll hold your clearance. And typically, not always, it's Department of Defense clearance. The vast majority of my work is IT related, but I also just this week hired a billing analyst for corporate in Reston. So one trait of mine is I became unemployed. I was 40 years old. I had a 6-week-old baby, and my husband was unemployed. So I picked myself up by the bootstraps. I did some waitressing because it provided bread on the table. And I went to, at the time, my church, and I would actually pick up the day-old bread that the companies would bring. I learned a lot from that because I treat all of my candidates, vast majority of which I can't get hire them to. I at least let them know. I close the loop. So if you didn't even get a call from me because you maybe didn't meet the basic qualification, I send out an email and let you know that my job was filled. I try to treat everybody the way I wanted to be treated because I can't tell you how many times I sent my resume out, and I can tell you on probably one hand how many times I heard back from a company. So I think for us that are in the job search, just knowing that I can check off STG for my list of companies that can't use my talent, at least I know I can move on. And it's so easy nowadays for us recruiters to let you know that you weren't in the top criteria for what we're looking for. So I want to encourage all of you. I told a gentleman I spoke with tonight, it's a job finding a job, but be persistent. Call us recruiters. If you have our number, bug us. Because trust me, I will tell you when, William, thank you, but really the skill set you have is not a match. But bug us, because oftentimes if Amira's hiring a salesperson, she might want to see who those persistent candidates are. So don't give up, and just again, be faithful. Use your network. I probably went over, but thank you.
No such thing as going over. But it does lead me into my first question, which, Amira, will start with you this time. So the process, one of the things we frequently find and hear from people is the frustrations that Kit just started to mention there, is the best way to work with recruiters throughout the whole process, right? So if you think of this whole process from the time we see a job or an opportunity and we're trying to both submit a resume, see whether we might have gotten interviewed, we might be interviewed, we don't know what's going to happen afterwards. What's the best way, the process is so many different pieces, so maybe that question is too long, but what's the best way to work with you during the process if I'm an interested candidate?
Once you've been identified?
Yeah, once I've
you've already
been,
made
obviously,
contact with me?
right. You gotta submitting a resume is one thing, but now we have a conversation, so we have a phone screen. What's the best way to work with you from then on out through the process?
Sorry. It's kind of short. Thank you. Okay, I would say the first thing, and this will be a common theme throughout when I'm speaking, is for you to be prepared. Prepared to discuss your background and your experience relative to the role that you want to be considered for. And just to be clear and concise in your communication. Stay on topic as much as you can, even though be enthusiastic about explaining your background, obviously, especially when I'm looking for sales guys. I want to see that enthusiasm. I want you to be on, because I know that that's how you'll have to be with a client, for example. be prepared if you have any questions for me. I mean, I'm just the type that I'll walk you through, this is what you can expect. I'm gonna go over your background and experience, I'm gonna tell you about the role, and I'll even be as courteous to tell you whether or not I think it's gonna be probably a match for your background. And if this is not the role for you, I'll even tell you that I'm gonna direct you otherwise, who I'll direct you to, what opportunities you may wanna look for, and I'll even go one cut above and tell you what type of companies may be looking for your background versus ours if it's not gonna be a match. So just know, be prepared, know where you wanna go, what your background's gonna be a match for, and be realistic about it. It's probably the best way to work with a recruiter.
And Kit, you may have already touched on that, persistence. I heard that pretty loud and clear. But as far as candidates who work with you, what are some of the things that you would recommend that would help them in the process?
Okay, thank you. One thing that I look for, and I'm old school, I'm a lot older than Brian, so I look for those characteristics that might not be on a resume. So phone etiquette. If I call your phone and leave a message, I don't want to listen to 50 Cent rapping for about 90 seconds. If you're on a job search, just, ratchet up a notch and leave a very professional message. Or if I email you, because I'm going to share your resume not only with my hiring manager at STG, but also our government customer. So another example, and this is a true example, is, and I know we're in the house of the Lord, but if you have a really provocative email address, I would just get a Gmail account or maybe a Yahoo, because it's embarrassing when my hiring manager, I see all sorts of things, so sometimes you become a little immune. But I'm advocating on your behalf. My goal is to help you find employment, and I also want to help my company generate revenue. So I have a dual purpose. So help me out. I always tell my candidates I work with, if I'm presenting, you ask for 50,000, but I truly believe you're worth 60, and I truly believe I know what the market can bear and handle. Work with me. So when you talk to the hiring manager, don't, and I try to coach my candidates, I'm trying to help you out here. So you have to take ownership too. So I want a candidate that is, if I call them, and I'll usually, 9 times out of 10, I say, is this a convenient time? If you're an active job seeker and you say, well, I'm on my lunch hour, can you call me later? I'll probably put a little note on your resume that you're not real active, that the job search isn't real important. If you're at work, I totally respect that. I don't want you to be in a position where your supervisor or your customer, that you're gonna maybe get laid off or reprimanded. Absolutely not. Just say, can I step out? And I'll always say, take your time. Or, William, when's a good time? I can call you this evening. Be honest with me. And that goes so far, because keep in mind, my jobs require clearances. So you might tell me that you're clean, or you might tell me you never had a bankruptcy, but when it comes on the SF-86, then that kind of makes me look like I didn't do my due diligence. So just those character traits that we all want, honesty, integrity. So I'm very keen on, my jobs usually move fairly rapidly unless it's a high clearance, and I'll, just like Amira, I will let you know my process. Most of the people I extend offers to and hire, I don't meet, because I cover territories. I extended an offer today in Sacramento, California, El Paso, Texas, and I cover Charleston, South Carolina, and I have global positions too. So I won't meet you. So my impression is not only just on paper, but then when I talk to you. And I love when somebody has done, not necessarily research on my company, but at least the agency, if it's drug enforcement. And if you're a habitual marijuana smoker, don't apply to my DEA job. So have a little knowledge about the company or the agency you're seeking to work with.
Thank you. Brian?
I know with our office, it's a very clear-cut process. I know we have phone screens initially. to identify candidates. If you're not selected for a phone screen, we do have an automatic email that will go out to let you know that you're not selected to move forward. If you email me your resume, I actually do a handwritten email, which I know is unheard of, but I actually will write back by my own hand. And then we have face-to-face interviews. So unlike my colleagues up here, we pride ourselves on being a local contact, if you will. So everything is in person. After the phone screen. So we actually do the in-person interviews. We do the testing. We also make sure that if it requires a drug screen or a background check, we would process that, which usually takes about 48 hours to complete on our end. And then from there is, just like Kit mentioned, is really making sure that you're making my job a little bit easier by having that professional email, having the follow through is really, really key. A lot of times in agency world, finding people who are really active, returning that phone call in the first 1 to 2 hours that we placed it is going to be key for me to place you, because usually I have about 48 hours to place a temporary role, and I have about 3 days to place a direct hire role. So that's kind of the process for us.
And Brian, take a quick minute here and talk a little bit about testing, because it sounds like the type of jobs you mentioned, probably almost everybody is going through some sort of test.
Right.
So maybe quick overview of what the tests are and then how you use the test results.
And so the testing for us is not a bearing of employment. We have to, I'm in the middle of my certification personally, so thinking of bona fide reasons to exclude a candidate. The testing does not bar you from a position that you're applying for. What it does is it kind of enhances it, if you will. We actually write up bios by hand to our clients, and we send that out in what we call a Talent Now, that goes out to our clients twice a week. And so what that testing will do is, if you're saying that I'm so great in Microsoft Excel, 2007 or 2010, then I'm going to be able to show that you can do pivot tables and macros and things like that because I have those backed up results. A lot of times when it comes to the senior positions, senior admins, executive assistants, or even sales positions, I get a lot of pushback from that and they don't understand. But we cross that bridge when we get to it, so.
So Kit, let's go back to you now. So employee referrals is something we're always encouraging people strongly. How do they work within your company? How important, do you guys see them? And maybe the level, do you really know when someone's doing employee? The fact that someone referred the person, what sort of different process do they get into?
You must have talked to Dorian. Well, at STG, employee referrals are huge. In 2013, 30% of our hires were employee referrals. And my personal goal is 40% of my hires should be employee referrals. And why is that? Well, employee referrals typically stay longer. The individual who referred that person, we hope, has put their personal stamp of recommendation on that individual. And in answer to how do we or how do we know it was a genuine referral? At STG, we have an electronic, and I'm sure my panelists probably have an electronic applicant tracking system. We use iSIMS, and we have a special portal. And when you join STG, part of our onboarding processes, we want to explain that. Because if you refer somebody to STG, we hire them and they stay on the job 30 days at least, you get $2,500 for an exempt employee. And if it's not exempt, which would be some of the positions that Brian hires, admin type, that's $1,000. So today, for example, I extended an offer for a person, and the hiring manager in Charleston reminded me, oh, you know, Katie was a referral of Amy. So I'm like, oh, no, I didn't know that. But let me go back in my ATS and just verify that. Sure enough, there's on our, when you apply, or excuse me, when you upload your profile, and with STG, all you have to do is upload your resume, and then it just kind of gleans your personal information into a profile. You don't have to apply yet. So it's very quick. It'll say source, and it might put Monster, Career Builder, McLean Bible Church CNM, or something like that. So if it says just STG website, that's what this one said. So then I went to the employee portal, and there was no upload of her resume. So I wrote back and I said, I'm really sorry, but I can't accept this. There was no reference made to your referring this individual. And a lot of people will try to take advantage of it, like if they start and they'll say, oh, William, put me in as referral and I'll split the money with you. And again, I try to treat my employer as if it was my own company. And I've been there long enough. I've been with STG going on 8 years, so I kind of know who my players are. And there's always a new one trying to get past the wicked recruiter of no. But I want it to be a genuine program. So what happened was the lady that referred my new hire, the hiring manager said, Kid, I can vouch for her. And I said, well, I don't want to get into trouble for putting something in my ATS that was not genuine. So I just want to be truthful and all that. But to end for this question is referrals are huge. So it's all about networking. And the bottom line is, I think for STG, it saves a little bit of money too when you have an employer referral. So don't hesitate to refer your friends at your current company. We love referrals, and I would love to have all of you, if you have skill sets that I'm looking for. I don't get referrals because I'm a recruiter. I'm straight salary. I don't make any commission either. So, but I would, I'm here to help you. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay. Brian, what about within your world?
Oh, within our world, I know that we do a lot of internal referring. So if you're currently an employee internally, not a temp or in the temp to hire side, we do offer incentives for that. When it comes to referring, I'm one of those pay it forward individuals. And me personally, we don't receive bonuses. We actually are salaried in my office. And so there's really nothing for me to gain but the good feeling that someone got placed. And the way I look at it from a networking standpoint is, if you're referring someone that's a friend, even if you guys are both applying for the same role, say if that person is currently working, then that means that position has opened up, allows me to get you, who referred them, into their role. And we can just play the chess match, if you will, and job hop everyone around so that everyone's happy. So that's kind of what I advise candidates to do.
So if employee referrals are generally the easiest way to crack kind of the corporate world, what's the easiest way to crack your world? If I'm sitting here saying, how do I get higher on the list of potential people that might be placed in your world?
And so we have a communication policy in our office. A lot of times people feel like they've done the testing, they do the interviews, and then they just don't hear back. I like when candidates bug me, but it's systematic for me. So instead of bugging me every day, which is definitely not productive for me, we do call-in availables on Mondays. Our Monday schedule is so that we receive phone calls in the mornings, or you can email me anytime during the day. That candidate is going to be seen as an active candidate who can actually follow directions versus the candidate who calls me every day. Even though they're active, they're not actually following our communication policy. That way I know what your schedule is for the whole week. So whether you have a doctor's appointment, friends coming into town, and you can update me throughout the week if something changes. But what I like to do, since I run a full desk, do both the recruiting and the sales side. If I have a client on the phone who says, hey, I like this person's resume, or I like this person's bio that you sent out in the Talent Now, I want to see them, when are they available for an interview? I'm going to say that person's available on Wednesday at 2 o'clock while I have them on the phone. Then I reach out to the candidate, give them all that information. So it kind of saves time, because again, I have that 48-hour, 72-hour kind of mark to fill it, so.
Mara, what about our friends at Verizon? What's employee referrals like there?
Okay. We do campaigns, referral campaigns. Okay. Oddly enough, you would think we have like a company-wide one, and I understand before I came, at one point, they may have had a larger referral program. I'm not sure of the way it was administered, but I don't think it brought them what they were looking for. So we're looking at revamping and rolling out perhaps a company-wide referral program, but we do accept referrals. It's just not, it's more of a campaign basis right now versus a company-wide incentive-based program, to answer your question. So one of the leaders may come out and they go, we're looking for these types of candidates in the sales world, and these are gonna be the incentives, and this is how it's gonna be paid out, and it's usually tiered. So after the first 30 days or 6 months, they pay out a certain amount, and then after a year, they pay out a certain amount, for example. But it's very important. Just if I could speak on it from my career standpoint in recruiting, we love referrals. We made a great hire, you're a great person, you have a great work ethic, we know you're gonna bring somebody to us that is like you. So we love to have them. They're very important. And so, I mean, I definitely encourage people to, when you're looking for your next opportunity, again, it's a networking thing. Reach out to your friends who work for companies that you want to work for. Do your research and make sure that they have opportunities that match someone like your background and experience, and capitalize on that. It's just, I mean, you probably can't really put the value in the words, really. Because it's always better to have someone introduce you than to have someone just look at your resume on paper.
So how does that resume that gets introduced, how does that get handled differently than a resume that's just sent over the transom?
Well, it's a high touch, it's what we call high touch type of resume. So if you're coming in from an employee, especially if it's up the chain, right? If it's an executive referral, for example, or something like that, and you'd be surprised, you can get creative. There's some candidates who will reach out to the executives about opportunities, and the executives will forward their resumes to us. So when that comes from an executive, then you're really like, I gotta make sure, let's be real, I gotta make sure I follow up with this candidate. So basically it's like an introduction before the introduction. So I know that if someone's sending me to you, they're saying, I'm signing off on this person, please take a look at him, and they'll put you to the top of the stack.
So it guarantees that human eyes are going to get on the resume.
Somebody's going to look at that
Not
resume.
necessarily a phone screen, not necessarily anything beyond that, just that human
Correct.
eyes are going to take a look at it.
Correct.
Yeah. Good. Brian, if we can come back to you now on the interviewing process. What is the interview process with your particular firm, since they tend to be kind of all over the map as far as styles that people are using? And then maybe do you have a particularly favorite interview question you like to ask candidates?
Well, I know with our process, interview-wise, it's usually about 20 to 30 minutes long. If we do decide to move forward, then the I-9 safety videos, if you will, take another 10 to 15 minutes. I know in terms of, since we work with 1,196 clients in our area, out of our office, I know that for me to organize it a little bit better, I have to bring in candidates that can market to 8, 10 different companies. I can't bring in a candidate who's so specialized in one particular field, Because if you don't get that particular role, then you just kind of sit in my talent pool. And I don't like having a talent pool that's not active because I have to move quickly. So questions range in terms of, how do you like to be managed? What's the right culture for you? In our world, we look at very minute things that some companies don't look at in terms of work-life balance, what's the ideal schedule, ideal commute, some of the things that we know are very important, but a lot of times candidates will say, I'm looking for a job, I'm open to commuting from PG County all the way down to Vienna, I just need a job. It's not really realistic in the admin world, because if you're working longer hours, if you have a family, traffic alone, there's no way for that to be a proper work-life balance. You're not going to stay. And so we have to assess risk. So I would say in terms of favorite questions, I would say any of my behavioral questions are favorites. Those are not yes or no questions. You have to give kind of a work-related example. I look for very concrete examples that you can give me from your work versus someone who gives me a generic answer. So I guess that's an easy way to put that.
Amira, how about you? So what's the interview process like? The sales position in your case at Verizon, or Verizon in general, I'm gathering it may be different across Verizon. And what's your favorite question you like to ask these folks when they come in? Or on the phone, I guess, in your case, a lot of time.
Well, people do come in and interview in Ashburn, and I do meet them. And I actually host interview days where I bring several candidates in. You're talking 8 or more to interview with managers, and it can be one manager or it could be a panel manager. And I've even set up telepresence interviews, which is pretty interesting to watch. I think you have a separation of this. You have what goes on in the actual interview with the manager, and since we are a large organization, we tend to be structured to a certain extent. So we have interview guides that map out what the manager is going to be looking for in an account manager, what he wants to see. And then from a recruiting standpoint, before you even get to that interview, some people call pre-screens interviews. From my standpoint, I'm going to find out, as Brian mentioned, what's going to be ideal for you in terms of your commute. I'll verify your education. If I have a position that requires a security clearance, I'm going to ask you, do you have a current clearance, whatever that clearance level is I'm looking for? When was the last time you had a background investigation? Or if I'm going to sponsor you, I'm going to ask if you're eligible and if you know what that means. And I'll get the pertinent data for that. One of the favorite questions I like to ask, when it comes to sales, I'm going to ask you what type of quotas are you used to carrying, what your numbers look like. Did you meet quota last year or the last time you were in a sales role? Sales guys need to be, how do you want to say it? I don't want to say braggadocio, right? But I want you to be happy about what you're doing. You should be touting your talents on Front Street, not I have to pull it out of you, right? Look, I got 300% of my quota last year and I was in President's Club. I want to hear it, that's what I want from sales guys. Besides the behavioral questions, as he mentioned, because they do bring out a little bit more detail than a straightforward, where do you want to work, etc. One of the questions I ask, oddly enough, that stumps some people is, if you had 2 offers on the table for 2 companies, but the benefits were the same, the compensation was the same, and the role was relatively the same, what would make you choose one over the other? And what I'm trying to figure out is what is really driving your decision to look at this opportunity. Is it the compensation? What is it? I want to get to the meat of what it is that you want. So, oddly enough, that stumps a lot of people.
Kid, what about at STG? What's the interview process like, or your interview process? And
Well, that's, keep in mind that I support about 15 managers, and I support drug enforcement, FBI, State Department, Department of Commerce, which under that umbrella is NOAA, National Oceanic Atmospheric Agency or Administration. Anybody in here work for the government? Okay, so you might have a better appreciation. Every agency is different, and let me explain. So my DEA positions in Sacramento and El Paso, the manager he covers that entire region, so El Paso and Sacramento roll up to LA. So my manager, the hiring manager's in Los Angeles. So we can't afford to fly people to LA. And I have a certain amount of time that I have to fill these jobs, because STG's bread and butter is, once, like all of us, I guess, you've got to have that resource performing before you're going to get paid. It's billable, okay? So I explain that to my candidate, because I've had some candidates, oh, wow, you work fast. I didn't expect an offer this quickly. Well, my friend, you know, I try to tell them it's going to be quick, the process. We hire sight unseen. I do have a young man from Ohio, bless his heart. He's got a few years of PeopleSoft development experience. And I told him, you know, this will go quickly. If I sponsor you for a clearance, now that well, we were backed up with clearances for like, our DISCO's database was 13,000 right after the government employees went back to work. And now, so it was taking literally about 8 weeks to get an interim secret. Now it's back to almost normal. So this young man's name out of Ohio, he said, "Kid, you know, this is kind of I'm a little nervous to go to Charleston, and you know, I haven't met my boss, and who am I going to work with, and what's the base like?" And I said, "Well, you know, I prepped him for the interview, but still, it is kind of scary for a young person to leave Ohio and go to South Carolina." So I said, "Tell you what, you know, since you didn't need any relocation costs, let me see if I can help you out, and you could drive down or use the money to go to a plane ticket so you can at least look at the facility," because this clearance came through this week. So our process varies. Department of State, anybody work for State Department? Okay, State Department will not let us as a contractor, and I don't know if it's a standard protocol, but we present the candidates. They will not let us sit in on the interviews. They do all the interviews behind closed doors. DEA, they trust us. So they let us make the hire. They're not involved except for getting the DEA clearance. NOAA, same thing for Department of Commerce. They don't care. HUD, oh my goodness, they want to be involved in every step of the way, and they change requirements about every 30 days. So it takes me forever. I get pinged big time because they're always changing the requirements. So it varies on the government agency. Corporate, I can manage my hiring managers at corporate, and it depends on the bureau, or not the bureau, but the division. So in the billing analyst, the billing manager, I told her, I said, "Roz, this is how we're going to do it. You need this person?" "Yes, we're so far behind." I said, "Okay, Roz, this is a piece of cake, but you gotta work with me. I'm going to present you, and I'm going to screen your candidates. I'm going to do all this, but we can make this hire in less than probably 72 hours because of my market. This is a beautiful market." Ladies and gentlemen, we're spoiled here, and I hope you'll find that in your job search. You know, be grateful that you're not in Ohio or you're not in Kansas, because the jobs there don't exist. And I talk to people, and it's sad because I want to bring that person from Detroit that is a developer or programmer, but the sad reality is his family doesn't want him to move, or her, or he doesn't have the money to move. So we're in an insulated environment here in the DC metro area. You know, I know you're unemployed, and it may seem like there's no light at the end of the tunnel, but really, there's a lot more jobs here than there are in the Midwest or like in California. And I have to give my panelist, Brian, some kudos tonight, because I started at STG as a temp, through a temp agency. Because I thought I was a brainchild, and I'd wait tables, and with my gift of gab, I'd make all these connections. But I think a lot of people that came in, and I served them well, and sometimes I got $1 tip. but they thought she doesn't have a brain, you know? Why is she waiting tables? So I went to multiple agencies, and I did take the test. And Brian's right. If you say you know Microsoft Office, whatever, intermediate, advanced, beginner, you better be straight that Brian's going to check you out, because I'm an Excel idiot, and I said I was, you know, beginner or less than. But I took a 50% pay cut. But I can tell you, when I started at STG, and I tell you this because I never thought I would ever regain the salary I lost. I took a 50% pay cut, but the beginning of my third year, I was given a gift of Employee of the Year. And Mr. Lee, the owner of the company I'm very delighted and blessed to work with, along with that came a nice bonus. And along with that DEA program that I'm talking about, which is near and dear to my heart, I worked it about 8 years now, is I had so many jobs to fill, and I did it well, that he recognized me for that. So while it was hard for me to eat that 50% pay cut, I had no choice, because there was no other offer at the time. And I started in the file room, and people would walk by, and they'd look at me like, oh, that poor old lady, she's just filing. Oh, they did, but you know what? I knew that my grandmother from Scotland always said, you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, young lady. And you just, when you answer that phone, you be professional. Somebody's gonna notice, and they will, and they did. And that's why I've stayed 8 years at STG, because you know what, when I prayed, and I said, God, just give me the chance to show my stuff. And I won't ever whine about some of the mundane things of my job, or the coworker in the next cube that's, you know, whining about her mom that she can't stand, and I'm like, wishing I had my mom. And that's why I stay. As long as Mr. Lee and Mr. Baker will have me and let me come do things like this, that I can give the gift of what I have in reviewing a resume, I will stay at STG. So just don't think that staffing agencies, it doesn't cost you anything but time. So check them out. If you can't get on board, you know, full time, I look at it this way, and I told somebody tonight, that gives not only Brian the chance to scope out your skill sets in the company he sends you on, but it gives Kit the chance to interview STG and see if that's an environment or a culture that she really wants to integrate with. So,
Thank you. Amira, back to you this time. So, best closing question that, you know, you turn it back over to the candidate and say, do you have any questions? What's some of the better closing questions that you've actually had people ask you that left you with a feeling that they were well prepared?
Probably one that threw me off just a little bit, but I mean, I wasn't expecting it, but is when a candidate goes, so given everything we've discussed in this screen, if you were the hiring manager and you had to make a decision today, what do you think? That totally threw me off. That was one of the best closing questions I received so far.
Salesperson asking for the order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was a smart question. They were being sharp. They're basically trying to figure out if this is going to be a fit for them. And as I said before, I'm a fair dealer. I'm straightforward in my communication, and I'm not going to sell you the dream. So either I will tell you if this opportunity that I looked at you for is probably going to be a good fit, or if there are other opportunities within my organization. One of the benefits I have is because Verizon is such a large organization and we have so many different divisions, there may be a fit for you somewhere else. I'll do my best to try to put you in touch with the right person if I'm not the right person for you to go through. But that was a good question.
Ken, how about you, best in the closing question?
well, I like, that's a great question. And oftentimes in the phone screen, because that's basically what I do. I screen for the basic qualifications, clearability. I want people to, ask what next steps are if I haven't already shared it with them, because oftentimes when I've screened, if I know you're not a fit, I'm not going to tell you about the next steps. So when you ask, that puts me on the spot, and I will try to fess up without, I'll say, I try to be a straight shooter, and sometimes that's difficult, to be honest. I will say, when I send out my, sorry, we've gone with another candidate email, they will write back and say, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time to let me know I didn't get the job, but where could I improve? And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be straight up again. I sometimes get hundreds of resumes for one job, and I want to be very fair with everybody. If you didn't interview, I won't even respond to that email, and I'll tell you why. As a government contractor, there's anybody with Department of Labor in here? Well, there's OFCCP as a government contractor, and I don't want to put my company in a situation that might lead to some sort of lawsuit. And I haven't even interviewed you, so, in some cases, those 83 resumes, I didn't look at all of them. It depends on when you applied. Like my billing analyst, I filled that quick because it was like when the minute she posted it, boom, boom, I worked it because I knew Roz was desperate. So if you applied like the 72nd hour, I dispositioned your resume as recruiter not selected, and then the next part was candidate I already identified. So keep in mind, strike while the iron's hot. Like, and I don't mean to take Brian's thunder, but he's working stuff 24 hours, 3 days for it. So you gotta work quickly. I don't think I answered your question, but
Oh, that was close. That was
Okay.
close. So
I'll be quiet.
No. Brian, what kind of has impressed you at the end when someone's asking you questions?
Thank you, Kit, by the way. In terms of the best, I've seen a lot of bad questions. I'll go over those first, actually. And so in terms of bad questions is, what are you going to do for me? Kind of questions, the elitist question, as I call it. I've had questions of, where do we go from here? And those are kind of the mediocre expected questions. But in terms of the best question is someone who has actually read the job posting. Because I give a lot of hints. Obviously, I have competitors who are going to go after the same position, so I can't, from a non-compete standpoint, list the client that I'm working with. But, if it's in the healthcare industry, I love it when people actually do the research and say, well, let me look up all the healthcare positions that would hire for medical receptionists in Falls Church, because that's where it is, and then actually come with the knowledge and say, hey, is it, X, Y, and Z company? And start listing companies, before I even tell them about it. And then really say, you know what, I've actually done a research on, these 4 companies. I'm actually interested, in working for these companies. Do you work with them? So it's more of a fact-finding kind of question. I really like those than someone who is just looking for any and every opportunity. We can help those candidates out too, but again, I'm looking for drive, I'm looking for hunger, I'm looking for someone who's knowledgeable of the market. We deal with a lot of relocations of candidates who are trying to get their foot in the door, but they didn't do the research to really know what they're getting into. We end up placing those candidates, and again, that's a high risk because they don't know the reputation of a certain company. So,
Do you see anything in common, Brian, that causes certain people to go from temp to perm more effectively than others? When you're talking to someone, is there, other than obviously background and experience, but
right.
is there any attributes you see that it's a higher probability they'll go temp to perm?
Yeah, it's funny how people treat us like headhunters, and this is before my time, probably before I was born. But headhunters were, obviously paid to look at your resume, and they were giving all these commissions and things like that. So you were able to kind of treat them a certain way. I tell people that, if the people who treat me as if, because we are co-employers when it comes to temp and temp to hire. So I have just as much liability and workers' compensation and things like that I have to cover on my end as the actual company themselves. So the way you kind of treat me, the responsiveness, the timeliness, and replying to emails that I send out, or even the job posting itself, is going to give me a lot of insight of how that person's going to be when they go temp, and whether or not they're going to be the ideal candidate to move into a temp to hire or even direct hire placement. So that's kind of the attributes I look for.
Okay. So last question for me, then we'll open it up to the audience for people that have questions. But lasting impression, right? And you guys deal with hundreds, if not thousands, of people during the course of the year. And I'm gathering there's only a small handful that kind of have been able to impress you in a way where you might remember them at the end of the year as unique. But Brian, let's go back to you. What are some of the things that people have done that kind of had a positive, lasting impression upon you as you were dealing with them?
I keep every handwritten card, like a thank you card from interviews. I have a separate place that I put those, and they're on my desk for at least a month once I receive them. And then I've had a client, actually, and again, this comes with networking, client that I've never worked with. It's just a prospect client, but her son needed employment, placed him, baked me a bunch of cookies, home scratch. So I had that for a whole week worth of cookies. So that was a lasting impression. So not saying that people need to bake because I need to just bake, but I mean, it goes a long way, people who recognize that we're on time crunches, we're salaried again, so we're doing this because we love it, but we have to be organized when we do it, so.
Amira?
I would just like to say that apparently I'm the middle-aged one here on this board. And don't bake me any cookies because I'm on a protein diet. Okay.
Here, I noticed.
Yeah.
I think I'm the only one that doesn't have one.
I need to get
It's pretty awesome. And actually, Verizon drives the technology behind this on the wireless network. And I learned that when I was at a recruiting summit for us in New Jersey, and it was pretty powerful to understand how many areas we actually we affect, basically, across different industries. So I love this company that I work for, honestly. Lasting impressions. Just to circle back around in terms of the prepared candidate, again, as I mentioned, this would be a theme. What I found most impressive coming across candidates is last thing that makes me go, oh my God, I'm gonna hurry up and get this guy in front of the manager right away. And get it, is when you're enthusiastic, know what you're looking for, able to sell yourself, concise, clear communication. You've done your research about Verizon. Maybe even tell me something that I don't know. Oh, you guys just acquired Vodafone. I know that you're probably going to start moving more on machine-to-machine communications in this area. I understand you're not that big in California, but you're getting there. I love it. I'm like, wow, knock my socks off. Tell me, I've had candidates tell me what manager they're probably going to be supporting in that division. I'm like, how do you know that? That intel, they spent the time to do the work. So it's just very refreshing to talk to a candidate who's well-versed and has done their research on your organization. So.
Good, thank you. Okay, what's left a lasting impression upon you?
Give me the, because I talk too much. Two things. One, I think it's old school. I greatly appreciate, and I think it says a lot about one's character. You don't have to send me a handwritten note, although I love them, and I make my kids write handwritten thank you notes. But just, if you follow up with a handwritten note, and like Amira said, if it's between Amira and Kid, we have the same comp structure, or we're same skill set, same everything. But Amira wrote the thank you note and Kit didn't, you can better believe that I'm going to let my hiring manager know. And not only if it just went to me, I forward things to my hiring managers. if you come into STG and you're not real nice to my receptionist, chances are you're not going to be very nice on the job. If you're not real nice with me on the phone, and I'm the one that's advocating, you probably won't be nice on it within the team. The other second part of my answer is, you know what I love that made a lasting impression? I had a candidate that I didn't work with him much at all, but he sent me a couple of very qualified resumes. And do you know, I went to bat for him. I said, you know what, I'm gonna help you until you get a job. And it may not be with STG, but I've got a pretty darn good network, and I'm gonna help you, because you went above and beyond as a candidate. And that spoke volumes about his character, and that I felt guilty a little bit too, even though he wasn't qualified. So it is those little steps, because it's competitive out here. So any little, and I'll bet Brian never will forget the company, the vendor that got him the cookies or company. And that's the same with me. Boy, I can remember those people that wrote the handwritten notes. And I want my hiring managers to know the caliber and the fiber that makes up that individual that took the time. We have so much technology, it's easy. Just like for me to let everybody know they didn't get the job, it's easy for you to send. It doesn't have to be handwritten. Email thank you notes are appreciated. And it also gives you the opportunity to recap parts of the interview. And then, that's so impressive. I send it to my hiring manager because I wasn't included on that interview or the conversation. So you may hit on some points, like maybe you're a former Marine or anything like that. Highlight those things that just might seal the deal for the hiring manager.
Great, thank you. Those are all wonderful. So I think we have more than one microphone. We have Will's got another one back there. Raise your hand if you got a question for these folks, and please stand up and when you ask the question.
Hi, thank you for coming this evening. Kid, I have a question for you. I have a top secret clearance sponsored by DOD, but I'm finding the positions I'm seeking as a defense acquisition systems engineer are requiring TS, SCI, poly. Would STG sponsor that type of clearance upgrade?
It depends on the program and the contract. I don't know if anybody's in the room. Is it I2S that you're being considered for? No? Okay, so if it's, because an SCI is exactly. So if my contract doesn't call for it, no, I wouldn't be able to sponsor you for that. But like I2S, which is a huge government procurement right now, it all requires initially full scope poly. So you have to have the poly coming in. But at some point they will get to the point where we will start the poly process. So we have a robust pipeline. Did that answer your question?
We work with SCI in Arlington, so know the hiring manager.
Thank you for coming out tonight. Brian, I think that you touched on this earlier, but I wanted to ask, as far as following up with you, where do you draw the fine line between persistent and annoying?
And so that goes into the weekly communication. I know that we interview throughout the week, so we have you marked available for that week. But our communication is really required weekly. We do send out Jobs Now emails, just like we send out the Talent Now emails to our clients. We send out Jobs Now emails to our candidates. My office is a little bit different than a lot of the other Randstad offices, but that's what makes us successful. And so what we instituted is, let's give our candidate pool a chance at the position before we post it to the street. So we send out those Jobs Now emails twice a week. Those positions, we get a lot of times, we have like 800 people in our candidate pool. We might get 60 responses. And of those 60, there might be 40 that say that they're interested in the role. And the other 20 say, well, I'm still available. You're gonna probably believe that those 20 that say, well, I just replied anyway, even though these are not the positions I'm looking for, I know that Brian is sending them out to everyone. Those are going to be the people that get placed before everybody else in that 800 candidate pool because they're staying available every week.
For me, I will let you know if you're being annoying. So if you haven't heard from me and you actually interviewed, chances are it's because my government customer hasn't made a decision. And I respect persistence, and I will let, and a lot of my candidates say, I don't want to, I'm sorry for being a pain. I'm like, you never owe me an apology. I will let you know if you're annoying. Don't commit. So, but that's just the kind of recruiter I am. As you can tell, I'm, very soft-spoken, and so I don't have a problem with that. And and even on the phone, I just want to kind of touch on something Amira said. Most of my screens are done on the phone, so I have to be honest, I had one candidate, I don't know whether she was just over the moon enthusiastic, and I'm like, really? You can't be that excited. And it was almost like I had to sit back and think, would that person be annoying on the job? Because she was just over the top bubbly, and I was like, whoa, cowgirl, you were just too much for me, and I'm not even a coffee drinker. So I guess sales jobs are different than maybe a programmer or a firewall administrator, but when you're woohoo over the roof, that kind of sets a red flag to me.
Well, I think you're operating in a different environment. I mean, when you're dealing with a lot of cleared folks in engineering and stuff like that, I don't expect an engineer to be over the top when I get on. So I think I might be like, yeah.
Hi. The question is for Brian. You said, if I remember right, you said like you have like an open house every week. Can you highlight that?
So this is something that we're starting again. We haven't done this in probably 5 years. And so we're doing open house every Thursday from 8 to 5. It's particularly in my office, candidates can walk in. If you've already interviewed with Ronstadt, you don't need to attend the open house, but it's particularly for new candidates. Some offices are doing them differently. Some of them do it on Mondays. It just kind of depends. You have to call the local office that you want to go to make sure you find out when it is. So you don't need an appointment. You can just bring your resume. If you're looking for temp or temp to hire work as well as direct hire placement, you can bring in your I-9 documentation to verify that you can work in the United States. Bring your resume, bring your references, because I like to check those. And then we get the process underway.
Your address?
Address is 8150 Leesburg Pike, Suite 800. We will validate your parking. Saves you $3.
I want to just piggyback on when you're dealing with agencies, and just be mindful if you've already submitted your resume to a company directly and recently, and I say recent, like within the last year, really, because some companies, they have different time limits. They may say within 6 months, but just on the safe side, if you've applied directly, for example, to Verizon, and then you get contacted or you deal with Brian, and then Brian's like, well, I have this opportunity at Verizon. Just be mindful of not being submitted from 2 different sources, because it creates conflict between internal recruiting and external recruiting firms, where we have to then try to figure out what date you applied to us versus what date you were submitted by them and who gets credit for that hire. So I'm just saying, be mindful of that.
And you can be honest with, I know a lot of people apply to 40 positions a day kind of thing, so they don't even track it. I prefer a candidate who tracks where they're applying to, and they have an Excel spreadsheet of that, because I need to know that from my end as well. So.
So, A, do you use LinkedIn? B, if you do use LinkedIn, can you kind of step us through the process that you use to find the best candidates out of the pool of millions of people that are on LinkedIn? So kind of give us a flavor for that. This is for everyone, please.
I will say for me, I'm not a fan of the LinkedIn for a particular reason. LinkedIn was meant to be a networking, kind of like how Facebook started, where you had to have a college email address to get on Facebook. Now anybody can join. Same thing for LinkedIn. It's moving away from networking, and it's becoming basically a job board, if you will. It's another monster, another career builder. It's inundated with articles and things like that are helpful, but it's going to be helpful for the one who actually has time to read it and they're actually employed. So if you're a job seeker, for me, I use it more so to stay in touch with clients and connect with them and work that kind of network. But when it comes to a candidate, I rarely attach a candidate, a job seeker, to my LinkedIn profile. Main reasons because one, from a non-compete standpoint, I don't want candidates to see who I'm connected to and working with because it could spill into another competitor. And then two, I post enough, in terms of positions that I'm working on, that they can see it just in my posting. So there's really no need to add me as a friend, if you will. So there's really no need there.
Just to piggyback on what Brian's saying, I think LinkedIn can be a strong tool depending on the types of positions that you're trying to fill. When I was doing primarily cleared and engineers and things like that, and I've been a member of LinkedIn since it first started, you're talking 2005, before it blew up, right? Yeah, okay. I was at General Dynamics, that's years ago. And so, but the types of candidates I recruit, which are sales guys are always out there. You need to be. You need to be connected if you're a salesperson. You need to have kind of what you've been doing on display. I do not find salespeople from Monster. I do not find salespeople from Dice, Career Builder, or any of those tools. So LinkedIn is one of the strongest tools for a salesperson to be using. And so if you're, in technology sales, cloud computing sales, anything sales, you need to have a profile on LinkedIn, and it needs to be built up, and you want to build your network. Do not need to connect to me personally. Again, I do post enough of my jobs and associate them with my profile, but my network is pretty large. But I can just speak for the sales team at Verizon and Recruiters. We use LinkedIn heavily, a heavy presence, and we have a recruiting account on there, and we post as well as connect and send emails.
Well, I'm going to piggyback on Amira because I was on LinkedIn most of the day today, so some of you in this room may have gotten an invitation from me. I use it big time, and why? I use it strictly for professional networking. My company is a mid-size systems integrator, and we don't have the bandwidth that maybe a Verizon does that I can post each of my positions on a Career Builder, clearedjobs.net or clearancejobs.com. So we have the old be creative, be entrepreneurial, can't even say it. But so I will go to LinkedIn and I'm looking for PeopleSoft developer with absence management module. And it's hard to find, Brian. Maybe you can sneak me one from Ronstadt.
Here's another business card.
And it's in sunny Charleston, South Carolina, and you have to be clearable. So I use it because, and I have 500 plus, and somebody asked me tonight, this gentleman, what was your question again? Because I answered it. You said, do you know all those 500 personally, right? Okay, I'm 500 plus. And the answer is no. But I will tell you, I had a boss once that she was like Brian, and I can totally see why Brian, they have the non-competes. My boss is like, she said, Catherine, why do you let all the other companies and recruiters see who's in your network? Well, you know what? I'm just that kind of gal. I figure that, I've been there. I've been unemployed. I used to go to the buildings in Reston, and I'd go in the lobby. I'm sure people thought I was weird. And I would take pictures of, the marquee with all the companies.
Yeah.
And I'd take a picture, and I'd go home, and I would get on my computer, and I'd be like, what job does Korn Ferry or Ronstadt or STG, because I wasn't getting anybody that wanted to hire me. So I believe totally, I'm confident enough in my abilities that, okay, if William wants to see, you know, all the recruiters, it's not gonna hurt me. I hope it helps William. And that's what it's all about. You know, we're here, isn't that what it's all about? Is we can help one another, even if I don't really know I help William, but if William can see who, like maybe Brian's with me or Amira, and if he can make a connection and maybe get a job, that is a prayer answered for all of us, is the way I look at it. And it'll come back to me or maybe my children or my friends in some way. So I'm an open networker. You can network, you can connect with me, but I use it big time. I used to have LinkedIn Recruiter, but we had to cut back, so I'm on the premium. I send in-mails, and what that means is I get 25 a month. Is that what it is, Amira? Oh, well, see, Verizon, they have a big budget. Maybe she'll give me a few. I get 25 a month, but the beautiful thing is when I send William an in-mail, and that's a, you know how you get that little canned response from LinkedIn and it says, I'd like you to add me as a connection. Okay, so it'll ask a few more questions, and if William never responds, LinkedIn is so gracious, they'll give it back to me, so I can go to the next person. I use it a lot. I am, you know, a senior recruiter in more ways than one. What I'm not good at is the tweeting, and I need to get better at it. But Bullhorn Reach is another tool I use big time. So people are very kind. If I personalize that little message and I'll say, hey, I have a PeopleSoft developer in Charleston, South Carolina. I might be able to help with reload, but you have to be a U.S. citizen. That way I don't get the green cards, the H-1Bs, because that's what a lot of the developers are. But if I may just say, here I noticed, you know, we're here to give you guys advice, and I want to just share a little tidbit that I've learned, and I like to share with all my candidates. And when I'm at an event like this. Number one, get your resume out on the boards. Indeed.com. How many knew that LinkedIn now, Brian, you're going to love this one. Now LinkedIn made it so you can actually put a blog on. I don't know if some of you read that, but it just happened this week. You can actually blog on LinkedIn. So Indeed.com, CareerBuilder.com. I still will go to Monster, and believe it or not, I found some good PeopleSoft on Monster. And you know why? Because it's demographically, in my opinion, driven. If I try to link with somebody in Raleigh, North Carolina, they're like, I don't know you. I'm not going to connect with you. But if I post a job maybe on Monster in, let me think, El Paso, it might get a heck of a lot more traction than Career Builder. You know what, we get a lot of bang for our buck is in Honolulu, because there's military out there. Craigslist, who would have thunk it? Yeah, so now Craigslist, if I put a posting on there or you put your resume up there, it might be lost in 2 hours. You put your resume up on a job board, how many of you know that you should go back in like every week or two, change a letter or something, it'll go back up to the top, okay? So that's a little bit of advice.
Well, Monster has recently changed, and so now it's very sensitive, if you will. It's changed in the past 2 weeks. So that way is no longer working for Monster. So what it's doing now is basically, if I put in that I'm looking for a national sales manager, what it will do is it actually puts weights, if you will, on certain words in someone's resume. And it's a smart resume searching tool versus just someone who happens to be within my geography, happens to have one or all 3 of those words. It's no longer the Boolean search method that a lot of recruiters are utilizing. It's totally different. So if you haven't learned it yet, it's the new way of searching. So.
I think there are analytics is what you're talking about.
Right.
And just like if you want your resume to be found and you're dealing with some of the technologies in a position that you're looking for, it may be a good idea to put those words in your resume in very small print, but white them out so you can't necessarily see them. But when somebody's doing a search, it'll pick up cloud, software as a service, infrastructure as a service, things like that that you've dealt with.
Yeah. The hidden word trick.
Well, you don't have to, but you may not want to just splash words on your, you know what I mean? You're trying to be found.
I thought that'd be like a keyword or something.
You could do that too. If you've worked closely with those technologies, you can frame them in your resume for your experience, like I've worked with these technologies in this application. But I'm saying if you're just trying to be found, at least, right? You may want to white them out, but put them really small on your resume. Because search engines are being optimized for that. It's called analytics. There's some tools out here that help